Good morning. Jim Dandy O'Kelly here once again. I'm amazed at the people who believe the crap they're taught about doctors and medicine today. I mean, you would think that when they see all these people going to doctors and getting drugs and operations and not getting better, but getting worse, they'd wake up. But they don't. Too many people don't. They have, what is it, cognitive dissonance? Somebody called me that once. Yet people look at me, and I have never been vaccinated, take no medications, which are erroneously called drugs, and I'm 82 years young. I eat a 90% vegetarian diet. I work out 3 times a week. I walk 6 days, 7 days a week. And nobody even says, in my friendly world, how do you do that? You're just lucky. Well, here's another piece of proof from the past. The Richmond and, I got to read this. My eyes are a little weak. Richmond and Louisville Medical Journal of 1879, when doctors were honest and fearless. And they talk about cancer and syphilis being caused by vaccination. You have to understand that when you get diagnosed with an organ disease, pancreatitis, or arthritis, or gastritis, that all they're really telling you is that this is the location of the disease. There's only one disease, toxemia. But this is where the poison settles in the body. So without further ado, let's go back and listen to this. It's only 11 minutes long, by the way, but it'll wake some of you up, I hope. Taken from the Richmond and Louisville Medical Journal, volume XXV, number 6, June 1879, article 2. Vaccination, the greatest delusion in the science of medicine. There is steadily arising in this country a rebellion against the compulsory vaccination law, which is not unlikely to seriously involve the general faith in Jenner's discovery. By prosecutions and punishments of some respectable and intelligent families, the authorities have been the means of constituting an anti-vaccination society with 2 newspapers, the Inquirer and the Anti-Vaccinator, and the country is flooded with facts resting on high authority which cannot fail presently to produce a panic. Peter Taylor, MP, who was one of the parliamentary commissions which 9 years ago considered the subject and signed the unanimous report in favor of compulsory vaccination, has been convinced that he was in error, and on a bill just brought in by the government to extend compulsion to Ireland, made a statement which convinced others of the impolicy of the law, notably Professor Fawcett. John Bright has already opposed compulsion, and Gladstone has expressed himself as suspicious of the law. Since Mr. Taylor made his speech on the subject, I have had an opportunity of conversing with him. He informed me that the bill will be strenuously fought on going into committee, and he was good enough to let me freely examine the facts and evidences on which he means to resist the new bill and urge repeal of that existing. It is hardly possible that such facts as the subjoined selected from a larger mass can fail to excite alarm. Dr. W. J. Collins, for 12 years vaccine physician in Edinburgh and London, writes, "If I had the desire to describe 1/3 of the victims ruined by vaccination, the blood would stand still in your veins." Dr. Hitchman of Liverpool says, "I have seen hundreds of children killed by vaccination." The Medical Times and Gazette declares that consumption has widely spread since the introduction of vaccination. The physician of the great London Cancer Hospital declares that many of the cases of cancer which have come under treatment in that institution have originated with vaccination. Dr. Ricord, a distinguished French surgeon, says, "At first I repelled the idea that syphilis could be transmitted by vaccination. The appearance of facts appearing more and more confirmative, I accepted the possibility of this mode of transmission, I ought to say with reserve, even with repugnance. But today I hesitate no more to proclaim this reality. Dr. Hutchinson has testified before a parliamentary commission that out of 13 children whom he vaccinated with lymph from a public vaccination institution, 11 exhibited the primary source of syphilitic contagion 2 months after. Dr. Brunel Carter declares that a large proportion of the cases of apparently inherited syphilis are in reality vaccinal, and that the syphilis in these cases does not show itself until the age from 8 to 10 years. Dr. Thomas Wilson, Officer of Health to the Acton Union, writes to the Lancet, and it is significant that so conservative an organ should have printed his communication. It is useless to deny that vaccination by human lymph involves dangers of scrofulous, syphilitic, and erysipelatous inoculation. Dr. Edward Ballard, medical inspector of the local government board, one of the most important medical offices in the country, wrote a pamphlet of the utmost importance on vaccination. The government, when appointing him, may not have known of this pamphlet, and since he was made inspector, his essay has suddenly disappeared from all bookshops. Diligent search for a copy failed to find one except in the British Museum. Speaking of some case at Acqui, Italy, Dr. Ballard says, "But the cases, how will we, cannot escape the inference that the child, Chabera, had become constitutionally syphilitic at the time when his vaccination was performed. 46 other children were vaccinated from him. Of these, 39 became affected with syphilis. Among these 39 were Louis Manzoni. From her 17 other children who were vaccinated, of whom 7 became syphilitic. She died. The nurse who suckled her got ulcers in the breast, and from the various other children who were syphilized, the disease spread by contagion to 18 mothers and nurses and to other children. In October of 1856, M. Moroni got some lymph in the tubes from Camp Obeso. A large number were vaccinated, of whom 23, whose parents were known to be healthy, were infected with syphilis. The nurses, said Dr. Ballard, were infected in their turn with indurate chancres on the breast. The mothers imparted the disease to the fathers. One of the 23 infected served for new vaccination. 11 infants were contaminated, and they infected others. Several of the children died. 11 nurses infected by the vaccinated children infected in turn other children which had not been vaccinated. Several of the contaminated women were confined either prematurely or at full term of children dead or living, but in every case bearing marks of congenital syphilis. Dr. Ballard further says that a latent syphilitic taint may be roused into activity by vaccination. The effort to suppress this pamphlet will be in vain. When the bill to extend compulsory vaccination to Ireland is fought, the government will have to meet these statements made by one of its chief medical officers. One of the most remarkable facts is that since vaccination was made compulsory, the death rate by smallpox in London has increased. In 1849 to 1853, before compulsion, and when only 10% were vaccinated, the death rate from smallpox was 292. But since compulsion, 1869 to 1873, the death rate from this disease was 679. Since the agitation began, the support which it has received from eminent authorities abroad has been remarkable. Dr. Joseph Herman, head physician of the Imperial Hospital, Vienna, writes, "My experience of smallpox during these 6 years of bedside attendance has given me the right, or rather has imposed on me the duty, of taking part in the bold and spirited onslaught on vaccination, which is now being carried on in Switzerland, Germany, England, and other countries. I am convinced that vaccination is the greatest mistake and delusion in the science of medicine, a fanciful illusion in the mind of the discoverer, a phenomenal apparition devoid of scientific foundation and wanting in all the conditions of scientific possibility. At Leeds, a surgeon named Corey had certified that a child had died from vaccination. The coroner refused to accept the certificate, saying, 'Vaccination is not a legal cause of death.' He therefore ordered the jury to return a verdict of died by visitation of God. But illegal and improper as it may be for a baby to die of vaccination, the cases are now so numerous that the false returns which have been made so as not to alarm parents are no longer possible, and that especially as it is conceded that vaccination does not entirely protect. Between 1870 and 1878, the number of smallpox patients in the great hospitals of Liverpool, Glasgow, Homerton, Dublin, and metropolitan London aggregated 22,465. Of these, the number that had been vaccinated was 17,056. These figures are startling enough if read beside the life of Jenner. According to the statements of Jenner and of many medical authorities in his time, persons who have been vaccinated were again and again inoculated with the smallpox and without any effect whatever. These experiments led to the belief that vaccination was a preventative. That has been proved a fiction, and the plea for compulsions now is that the vaccinated suffer more lightly when attacked. But since the medical tenet follows an ancient orthodoxy of inoculation, now penal, and a modern orthodoxy of complete immunity, no new theory has any right to claim infallibility. The latest theory appears also to be mistaken. The London death rate has increased since compulsion. But even if it were otherwise, the policy of coercion cannot be sustained in the absence of any possible security, the matter being unanalyzable from the accompanying perils. But it is an interesting question, even a puzzle, how Jenner's reports can be made consistent with contemporary facts. M.D. Conway in Cincinnati. Well, here's my notes. As the pro-vaccine doctors were backing off of smallpox being a preventative to stating that the vaccination would make the disease less severe was an absurdity, as no one had a crystal ball to determine how sick a person would get before they got sick. Only a non-thinker would buy this. Unfortunately, there are too many non-thinkers, and that's why they get away with poisoning the population. And you know, this thing about vaccination modifying your disease, they still do that today. So now you understand that they too have access to these type of books, and this is where they got all their excuses, their alibis, and their lies. They figured they worked in those days with the masses, and they will work that way today too. Now, it will also surprise you to know, not only did the smallpox vaccine cause syphilis, which I even have a book by a pro-vaccine doctor who admits that reluctantly, but he does admit it. It will also surprise you to know that the smallpox vaccine was the cause of leprosy, polio, measles, and a host of other diseases. And in my future audios, you're going to learn the truth, and you will be armed not to sink this vaccination boat, but to destroy it. Thank you for listening. Please, again, share this information with others.
And there you have it. Who do you, the general public, believe? These doctors that were there during the time all these things happened? Or the doctors of today, who have no clue of the real history of medicine? Something to think about. Dandy out. Till the next time.